You've probably seen this guy before. He is a game developer, a programmer, an award-winning streamer, and probably the most prolific person in my YouTube Shorts feed lately. So, when he recently said,
Scrum is awful. I hate Scrum.
I took notice because I kind of agree with him. So we're going to talk about two things today. First, how Thor was right, and second, what we can all learn from his own experience for our own Agile and Scrum implementations. Because honestly, his complaints about how Scrum operated at his employer definitely hold water. They sound very familiar to me. These are things that I've heard from lots of teams over the years. He says that Scrum has too many meetings, and he gives as an example how a late start to the daily stand-up, after he had already been working for half an hour, interrupted his flow and basically kills his morning productivity. He finds it harder to get started in the beginning of the day knowing that he's got a meeting in half an hour, because then he spends another 30 to 60 minutes after the stand-up trying to get back into whatever kind of headspace he was in before the meeting interrupted him. And by that point, he's just looking at the clock, noticing that, hey, lunch is coming up, which further saps his energy. And what this is it's a great example of how a single 15-minute meeting plopped unceremoniously into the middle of your morning can really wreck a huge amount of your productivity for the day. You know, whether it's big or small, context switching is a real thing. It's a massive drag on worker productivity. There was a 2022 study cited in the Harvard Business Review noted that workers seem to be losing possibly as much as a full 5 working weeks per year just switching between different applications at work. And that's before you take into account how much disruption and loss of concentration in doing something creative like IT work. So what can we do about it? Well, you could consider bringing this up with your team as an excuse to talk about working agreements, whether you already have one and you need to update it, or it's been a while and you're not sure if you're really sticking to it anymore. This could be a really good conversation starter. Ask your team members what they think about this. Setting aside the total amount of time that they spend in meetings every day, do they feel like the structure and the timing of the meeting messes with their flow? Would it be better if you could group a bunch of meetings together and then give teams, everybody a longer stretch of time where they can just decide what to do on their own? Would that be more productive? And if you're unsure about how to discuss this, maybe just share this video with them after you're done liking and subscribing, and then you can talk about it later. If you want to get a little more formal, a little more advanced with it, here's an idea you can throw on the table and see what your teammates think. I call it library time. Now, I read about this years and years ago. There was a co-located development team who would have their daily stand-up together every morning from 9 to 9:15, at which point they would go back to their desks and put on their headphones. The rule was that in their office there was to be no talking from the moment the stand-up ended until noon every day. If you needed to talk to someone about something, you did it outside. They blocked the time off in their calendars so no one could schedule a meeting during that time. They weren't expected to respond to emails. They turned off chat and other distractions. And every day they were able to get head down into the code and be really, really productive and distraction-free because they had a quiet working space together. Now, obviously, you're going to have to do a little bit of stakeholder management to make sure no one comes barging into the team room at 10:30 demanding the team's time, but that's what the Scrum Master's for. It's what you're being paid for. Now, I've offered this idea. I've put this out there on a number of teams, and we've found it really productive as a conversation starter. Not everybody wants that hardcore 3 hours a day every single morning, and obviously there are external challenges you have to get past to make all of this work. But a lot of people do have strong preferences about this. They like having that morning productivity time. That's what they would like to have. Other people, I've seen a bunch of people enjoy that right after lunch. They want their lunch to be, their afternoon to be open. They want to be able to, they want all their meetings in the morning. They want to start and have meeting, and then turn all of that off, have something to eat for lunch. They come back to work, and then the rest of the afternoon, they just want to dig into it. And all of these, none of these are bad. None of these are wrong ideas. What we should always be doing is going to our team, asking them the way that they like to work. What are the things that bother you? Let's get rid of those. What are the things that you would like to have? Let's try to get more of those into the space. And this way you can have a productive environment for all the people on your team to work at their best, which is, it's kind of important in Agile. The second big thing that Thor is right about is rethinking the stand-up itself. Now remember, classic Scrum, vanilla Scrum, it's designed for a team doing work in very close coordination, which is why you want to have that daily meeting of the minds. Everyone can get realigned for what the day is going to bring and whatever challenges they're facing. On the other hand, there are lots of other teams that do Scrum where the individual team members are working more as individuals in their team. They're working in the same field, but they don't really require this kind of close, tight coordination, which I think is what the work that Thor was doing at the time. I think it's actually kind of telling that he didn't say, our morning was interrupted. Well, he wouldn't have said it like that. He'd be more like, our morning was interrupted by this meeting we didn't need because we were all working together so well already. Now, what I'm inferring from that is that the meeting itself was of little value because of the kind of work that he does. They didn't need this kind of daily coordination, knowing what everybody else is doing, because they weren't really inclined to possibly step on one another's toes. And so his idea of having someone else go to that meeting to gather all of that relevant information, put it in an email for the team so that they could have their mornings free to be productive, well, he was doubly right. First of all, he didn't want his productive time interrupted, which is true, but the thing itself that was interrupting wasn't really in a great format for what he was doing to begin with. So what can you do with your team? Well, I would recommend putting this question to your team. Are you getting something out of these ceremonies, or do you think they could be changed? Maybe this is a good opportunity to review why we do all of these things. Can we scale them back? Can we tighten them? Could we refocus? Could we move them around somehow? You know, we forget this sometimes. We want to apply all the rules of Scrum or whatever processes that we've been handed, and we say, well, these are the best way to do it. But you have to have that feedback with your team. You have to go back to them and make sure they understand why these things happen, what the value is, how they're supposed to function, and then ask them, is it really happening? Are we actually getting all of this tight coordination? Is that valuable to us? And if the answer is no, I don't need that. If you need me to do these things, there are more productive ways to do it. Put it in an email. Then you should be doing that. You should be doing that on the regular, in fact. One last thing I want to highlight in Thor's video is it's actually a question. He's got a lot of great thoughts about this, so why didn't his managers hear about it? Now, I mean, I'm assuming they didn't, because if he did tell them about it and they told him to, they weren't going to take his advice, they just sort of shrugged it off, I feel like he would have said it. So I have a feeling it was one of those more, again, very popular situations where you are asked to give feedback and you just sort of sit there like, you don't really want me to tell you, right? I mean, you don't actually want me to tell you all of the many ways in which I am not being a productive employee. You're my boss. That's going to be putting my head in the news, right? Just a quick reminder for everyone that the 12th Agile principle is, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. So no, I don't think any Agile team worth its name has any excuse for not regularly getting team feedback and adjusting accordingly. Of course, I'm assuming that the team ran retros. Sometimes they don't. Some people just don't understand any of this and they think the team will just proceed to get better and more productive just by existing. And so certainly that's a possibility. It could have been that. And for added benefit, when a team is required to adopt any sort of exogenous change, anytime somebody from the outside of the team comes in and tells them, you're going to work like this, I'm telling you the way that you're going to work, it's extra likely to cause friction and awkwardness because it's way more difficult to mention to your boss that the thing you told us to do is causing all of these problems, but they also reveal my shortcomings as an employee. If you're a Scrum Master, you've got to work on having better retrospectives. Now, I'm going to repeat myself from earlier and recommend that you share your concerns directly with your team in as normal and real person kind of way as you can. Admit that you're not perfect. We're all trying something new, and obviously the system needs to be tweaked if it isn't working for everyone. Now, remind them, and possibly yourself and your superiors, if not everyone is on the same page about this, the point of all of this, which is to make the team more productive. So if you have shared some new practice and you're trying it out and it's causing friction, we just need to talk about it because the point of the whole thing is to be more productive. And remember, there are no agile police. Nobody's going to come bursting down your door and throwing you in jail because you decided to modify the way that Scrum is described in the Scrum Guide. If you're still having difficulty getting traction with your team, maybe consider throwing out a few ideas of your own. Now, I mentioned library time earlier, but there's all kinds of other ways to run any agile ceremony or customize it or tweak it in any number of different ways. Maybe do a little bit of research, throw out some crazy ideas to the team to get the conversation started. This is actually a really great opportunity to kind of break that tension. You know, a lot of teams, they don't really believe you when you say you want honest feedback or that you want to do a retrospective or make things better. A lot of these problems are, if you're on a team, it's obvious what the problems are, and the fact that you have a manager or a scrum master or a PM or whomever else, one of those people coming to you and saying, well, what do you think we could do better? It's kind of a silly thing, because you have a million things that could do, but like, it's obvious what could be done better. Why do you have to ask me? If you're asking me why we have to do something better that is so obvious, I don't really believe you. I don't really think that you're here for honest feedback. I don't think you actually want this. I think we're just sort of going through the motions, and that's when people in retrospectives get kind of, you know, introverted. Probably more introverted than they are in normal meetings. But I can tell you this, if that's a problem or if that's a concern, if you think that might be what's happening, if you keep asking these open-ended questions and everybody around the table is just sort of sitting back and not engaging, maybe you try throwing out a bad idea. Not so ridiculous that people won't actually engage in it, but just something that is, you know, is bad, and you know that they know is bad, and everybody just sort of understands immediately is bad, and from that, you can break that tension. Because now you don't have to be the guy saying, our stand-up is terrible, we shouldn't be doing it like this, we never should have been doing it like this, it was always a terrible idea, it was never a good idea. Nobody wants to be that guy. But if someone throws out, if you, the Scrum Master, or anyone else throws out some silly idea, moderate, you know, mostly silly idea, like, let's have our stand-up meetings outside the building every day. Like, we're not going to do that. Everybody knows we're not going to do that. We all get a good laugh about it, and then we start talking about, well, what's wrong with that? All the many different ways that it's wrong. And that gets the ball rolling. It breaks that tension. It makes people feel like they can start sharing more thoughts, and they can even share negative thoughts. They can share things about stuff that's not going well because you opened it up with a bad idea. Just throwing that in front of people will get a lot of conversation going, and it will open up doors in people's minds that they don't even know themselves why they're closed in the first place. And lastly, be sure to reassure them that the point of the retrospective is not to spy on employees or to tattle back to leadership about what they say. Unless that is the point of what you're doing, in which case I would like to politely show you the door and ask that you never come back and watch any of this stuff again, because you're not listening. Now, that being said, I do have a few words for the team members who are watching this. Look, if you've got feedback to offer your Scrum Master, possibly even about how to run the retro itself, and you're not comfortable talking about it in the retro, you can find another time to talk to them about it. Just because we have a retrospective doesn't mean that's the only